Building a family can be a complicated, messy, lonely, and sometimes heartbreaking process. But you don't have to navigate this challenging journey alone.
Welcome to the All Paths podcast, where we support and celebrate all of the different ways there are to try to grow your family. We are your hosts, Kate and Emily from the nonprofit organization All Paths Family Building. And today we're talking with Meg about her journey. Meg, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're so happy to have you with us. So before we get into your family building journey in more detail, we'd love for you to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So my name is Meg, and I run the blog and Instagram account for the Barreness. I started it midway through experiencing and learning about all my fertility struggles, really for, at the time, seemingly selfish reasons. I was feeling very lonely and just wanted to connect to some people that could resonate with some of the harder feelings I was having. And it has since done that tenfold and been really incredible. Outside of fertility life, which feels like there's nothing outside of fertility life sometimes because it takes over so much. But I run a nonprofit organization out in the Bay Area. And I spend a lot of time with my dog and my husband, just trying to keep busy and go day by day.
That's great.
Thank you. And it's definitely not selfish.
I was just about to say that. I mean, I know what you're saying. I mean, to me, it was self-motivated, but it is a gift to yourself and a gift to everyone that you're impacting. So I hear what you were saying by using that word, but we're like, no.
I like that. That's a much better way to put it than what I really felt like, which was like, just be my friends, everybody.
Well, yeah, but it does remind me, and obviously there's many people in our broader community that are in this situation. They looked around and what they specifically needed, they didn't find. And so they built it. But you build it for yourself and for everyone else that it touches, which is lovely.
Thank you.
So we'll get to talking a little bit more about, the community that you've built. But can we go back to the beginning for a bit? Where did your journey to starting a family begin?
I mean, I guess it was 2020 when we said those, famous last words of like, well, we're not trying, but we're not preventing, which, I mean, the real secret is that actually means you're trying. Like, people don't, you can't really say that out loud, but if you're doing what you're doing without barrier, without birth control, like that is in and of itself trying. I didn't really realize how challenging it would be at the time, but I think like a lot of people, I had this like instinct that things wouldn't go so smoothly, having a lot to do with my menstrual history, later diagnosed with endometriosis and all these things. I didn't know that at the time, but I knew that things just like weren't jiving as they should. And it took us a little while to get pregnant the first time. But once we did get pregnant, I miscarried at about 9 or 10 weeks. And I got that response that we all have heard so many times that I find unhelpful, but, just told this is common and try again. No tests, no investigation, no consideration for what just happened. So we did, and we tried again and miscarried again. And at that point, my OBGYN was like, well, that's a real bummer. That could just be bad luck, but I actually can't do anything anyway until 3 losses. So then it was the third loss that she was like, yeah, something's probably wrong here. Ran some basic tests. Everything was coming back normal in the blood workup. So it was at that time that we started shifting over to seeing an endocrinologist, starting to really investigate what was going on. All of this was happening within the first year of my first pregnancy. At that point, we moved over to an endocrinologist. They recommended IVF so that we could test the embryos. I still felt that there wasn't a lot of investigation being done. It was a lot of jumping right into treatment protocols. But all of that was still about 4 years ago. And since then, I have had in total 7 miscarriages, timing ranging anywhere from the shortest being 5 weeks to 12 to 13 week losses, and a lot of tests, a lot of clinics I've gone to, and I see a reproductive immunologist, I see an endocrinologist, and just over the last few months, I finally got into a recurrent miscarriage specialty. So, still, we've discovered a lot, but it's still a little frustrating because there's no way to ever say for certain this is the thing that's causing it. It's more like here's a bunch of issues that could be causing it. So, let's treat them all. So, we're still in the journey. We are still I've done 3 egg retrievals. I have done 2 transfers with tested embryos. Both of those resulted in pregnancy, both in loss. But right now, I did take about a 9-month break after the later pregnancy loss that just kind of really put me in a dark space, a really just like hard space emotionally, physically. I think all miscarriages are painful and hard. In my experience, that was an experience that really made it challenging. It was a tested embryo. We had the heartbeat. We had the images. We really thought like we got there. We did it. And then we didn't. So took a little break. Now I'm back in it. Now I'm doing all, the Lupron treatment and letrozole and miscarriage treatment and immunology and just like a whole slew of medications and treatments and plans to really invest in trying to transfer again. I've said, before to people that I think one of the hardest things after loss is wondering, should we have done something differently? And so trying to make sure I don't have that feeling again. So
Mhm.
that's kind of where we're at, and
Yeah.
yeah, and a bunch of stuff in between.
Yeah. We appreciate you sharing so much. And it is so hard. As you said, one loss alone can be so difficult, but to go through so many and they're varied. And so you get past a certain point, and if it's longer than some of your other ones will be, you can't help but have that human optimism and
Mhm.
emotions related to that. So it is very, very challenging. But I also really can feel how much work you're putting into the knowledge. And even though, like you said, it's maddening that there really often isn't an answer or even the answers, plural. But the more information sometimes, the better. And it's a more informed plan then for how you're going to move forward. And to just feel like you pursued all those different avenues and you, again, maddeningly can't control the outcome, but you can control some things in this, including, the different like knowledge paths that you're traveling. So it sounds like that is good.
Yeah, I just feel a bit like you become a med student, right? Like
Yeah,
they always say advocate for yourself in healthcare, but it's like how do you don't know what to ask. So
right.
I've got I've got more reproductive health books on my bookshelf than I think
Mhm.
most med students do. But for my feelings, being the type A plus person I am, I think just it helps me to know what I'm going in for and be able to advocate because I actually know the information.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I mean, I would say you're getting, unfortunately for our medical system, you're getting more of an education than a lot of people get in med school. I mean, again, unfortunately, I'm sure you know way more about endometriosis and adenomyosis than most med
Oh my
students. That's
gosh.
part of the problem in our medical system.
Yes.
So, how did those diagnoses come about? Because I know a lot of people go without those diagnoses for a long time.
Yeah. It's such a frustrating thing that I hear all the time. I got my first period very early. I was like 10 years old. I got my period like a few months before my elementary school actually had the talk with students about it. And I remember going home mortified, asking my mom if they did it because of me.
Oh no.
Like, did they bring this talk right now? Because I had my period and now the other students got to know. It was not personal. It was already planned to be that year, but my periods were so painful that I would be on the bathroom floor, nauseous every month. And then I'd go to the doctor and I remember the doctor just saying like, yeah, periods are painful. And I was put on birth control at like 12 years old to manage the pain, not even like fully understanding this medication, but just trying to mitigate that. So I think for that reason, I just always knew my body should not be in so much pain. I should not have such a heavy flow that even as an adult, I can't tell you the number of times I'm like wrapping sweatshirts around myself because even when I use a cup and a pad and period underwear all at the same time, it just isn't enough to contain it. So all these symptoms really made me think something was going on. And frustratingly, I did push for testing after I got off birth control in my 20s. And I went to my OBGYN for it and it was really dismissed. She just like really kind of said, oh, it's so unlikely. And I think she didn't even quite know how to test for it. And she said, the only way to really test is surgery, but I don't do that here. And I remember saying, like, who does then? She didn't really have an answer. So it's unfortunate that it wasn't until I had multiple miscarriages that anyone cared enough to investigate and listen to me. And it frustrates me for a few reasons. One, I don't think that someone should have to be wanting to have children to get medical treatment for a disease. I have a cousin who they are not interested in giving birth to a child, and they have endometriosis, and they cannot find a doctor because they are all at fertility clinics. And so I just feel like even if I didn't want a child, I deserve to be treated for this. I deserve to get diagnosed for this, and I shouldn't have to go through losses to finally get that. So that frustrates me about endo, but I did finally, it was even after doing a transfer, having that miscarry, that I finally was able to get them to be like, I want you to look inside. Like, saline sonogram, not enough. Get in there. I don't care about the scars. Like, something is going on here. Please get in there and look. And so we finally had a procedure where they could look and see. It was the MRI that showed adeno. In that, it felt both like finally an answer. This wasn't in my head. I wasn't just a woman who
Mhm.
couldn't like handle the pain of a period.
Yeah.
So that was nice to hear, but then also a little bit of like how do I get that phone number of the doctor I had at 12 years old that wouldn't listen to me and just say, hey,
100%.
about that.
You're not
Mhm.
alone. You're not alone. And
No.
actually, I think a lot of people have, you know, we like sort of jokingly, we're like, well, at least sometimes it can be very therapeutic to send them a strongly worded letter.
Hmm.
Um, and to just, unfortunately, you have to sometimes be their gentle teachers because most likely they haven't come that much further in their own knowledge of endometriosis, given what we hear all the time. And it's just
Yeah.
so crazy. Like to me, I'm obviously not a clinician, but because we care so much about the endometriosis community and we're very connected to them and active with them, I feel like as soon as someone tells me that they had periods that where they had to lay on the bathroom floor and miss multiple days of school, I'm like, I can't say for certain, but I would say you most likely have endometriosis. It's like
Hmm.
we need to almost have I'm not saying everyone needs to go, straight to treatment. But like, why don't we have the assumption they have endometriosis until we're proven wrong? Because
Hmm.
also in my experience, it's very rarely proven wrong. When there's the suspicion of endometriosis based on your medical history, it's rarely then proven, oh, sorry, you didn't have it. We were wrong. And I mean, like you said, if that was the case, you would be like, oh, okay, but I mean,
Yeah.
that's why, like, we hear from many patients exactly what you just said, which is in some ways you're almost more afraid that they're not going to find it at that point than that they are because you've suffered in silence and without really good care and treatment for so long that you want, as hard as that news can be to cope with, then you can have a plan for addressing it and making it
Hmm.
better, which is really good. So did you have
Absolutely.
surgery for your endometriosis?
I did in let's see, that was the end of 2022. I did. And since then I have also done round of Lupron Depot, which has, I think helped significantly. It's not permanent. There is no permanent treatment except for scooping it all out. And
Yeah, yeah.
and with adeno as well, even a hysterectomy would still leave some issues, some pain, but it, like you said, it's nice to have an answer to an issue and be able to make a plan for that. The recurrent miscarriage specialist that I've started seeing has been the most reassuring because when I talk about a random medical thing too that I think is unrelated, he even is able to say like, well, that's the end now. He specializes in this. He understands this better. So like I mentioned to him how, oh, my AMH increased a huge amount. I must be all those supplements I'm taking. I must be doing something right. And he's like, no, you just had a heavy testosterone month. It's a false, like, high number. Like, that's the endo. And I was a little bit like, oh,
Uh,
but then also like, that makes so much sense. Like,
yeah,
thank you
yeah.
for explaining. So I did have the procedure. I have considered if since it's been a few years, doing it again before another transfer, but having spoken to my doctors in this area, unless we feel like the cysts are really bad at that time, that the better treatment is Lupron combined with letrozole and doing a really high like anti-inflammatory lifestyle and diet leading up, because surgery also can do damage to lining, it can cause scars, and we don't want to create more issues right before a transfer. So
Right.
I think that it probably depends on the person. I am not a medical provider, but that made a lot of sense to me that we don't want to also disrupt the environment right before going into any kind of a transfer.
Yeah, definitely. And my thing is just that I don't believe that, like, by any means that one size fits all, obviously, for especially for something as complex as the things we're talking about. But also, I just want people to have options. It just worries me
Hmm.
that for so many years, people thought like there was only one way to treat endometriosis, or they didn't even know about it enough to diagnose
Yeah.
people in a prompt fashion. And obviously, we're still struggling with that. And I think as much as there's misperception and misunderstanding about endometriosis, adenomyosis is even more unknown and uncertain and really challenging too. Again, I don't need to tell you that, but it's so challenging. And when you have both, I think you're like, I don't really know where one ends and one begins in terms of the symptoms.
Yeah, absolutely.
And have you found a community of support specifically around recurrent loss? Because I think that
Mm,
is a particular part of our journey, or the
yeah.
journey to try to grow your family.
Yeah, I that one's been really challenging in truth. I think that it's through my Instagram page that I have found people. In person, it's a little more challenging. I think that the like infertility community as a whole is really incredible, but then we do find ourselves in these more like siloed subcategories where you want to find someone there as well. Because it can be really challenging for me. Well, I really do empathize with the pain. It's harder for me to relate to someone with secondary infertility because I don't have any living children. So, like, while we both might have, for example, recently, we both might have a hard Mother's Day, somebody with a living child is still doing Mother's Day activities.
Yeah.
Whereas I was like, came up with a list of all the places that seemed safe to go to. Like I went to Lowe's hardware store. I went to like a winery where they don't allow children. I went to an R-rated movie. Like I'm like, what are things what are like the totally
I love
That's a
non-sensical?
great
that.
way of managing that.
I love that.
That's such a true observation that as much as we want to be like this whole wonderful community of people that can support and understand you, there are definitely levels to
Yeah.
understanding and support. Like for a long time, our groups were really general. We had like general infertility, but like there are so many different things that happen under that umbrella
Yes.
that we've tried to really start to narrow them down and say like, no, this is a space that needs to be a little bit smaller to really let
Hmm.
people connect at that really basic level, so that they get everything that they need out of it.
Absolutely. And I definitely never want to play like the grief Olympics. I think pain is pain, and that's all that matters. But when it comes to things like recurrent miscarriages, there's medical things I want to talk to someone
Mhm.
about that, I think there's a different kind of heartbreak if you've never gotten to see a positive pregnancy test. I feel for that so much. That's a dream for so many people. Um, and it's when they if they see one day it could be feel like a positive thing, whereas I talk to my
Mhm.
therapist quite a bit about how scared I am of positive
Mhm.
pregnancy tests. I know it's how to get to the end goal is the baby, but it's very scary. So when I meet people who've had recurrent losses, we can talk about things that are like the physical side effects of things. Like I had a really good conversation with someone online recently about postpartum, because you do have postpartum after a miscarriage. The hormones still have to
Mhm.
drop, you still go through all of that. So I do think that it's been really, really helpful to find them online. And you know, it's sometimes it can feel even like different levels that way. People who lost one much later in pregnancy. I have a good friend that I've spoken to on Instagram Live who she lost her son at 3 days. It's a different kind of loss, and we talked about that. So yeah, I do think it's really important to have like the general community, but also whatever that specific challenge is, if you can find people going through that same challenge or having been through that same challenge, it just gives you a different level of understanding in the same way that and again, these are two very different diseases. It's not a, it's not to make a comparison, but I have a close friend who was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she has said that the overall cancer community, while wonderful, is not the same as the connection she's made specifically with breast cancer, talking to women about mastectomies and the hormones and things like that. And so I think it's very similar.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's a very apt comparison. And I think as much as support can be tailored to your needs, the more likelihood is that you'll find people that you can relate to. And I think the most, to me, obvious example of that is the one you gave, which is that just recognizing that secondary infertility is very valid, but very different than not
Mhm.
parenting a living child yet, and
Mhm.
wondering if and how that is ever going to happen. And so I think that's why we tailor our groups, as Emily said, and I think what you're saying makes so much sense in that way. Well, we do. I don't know if you have encountered the Recurrent Pregnancy Loss
Yeah.
Association, but we work with them a lot, and
Yeah.
we do love them. So if you hadn't found them already, I wanted to make sure you knew about them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely have followed them, put myself in their community. It's got amazing resources too. I
Great.
really
Great.
appreciate all they do.
I'm glad you found them. They're awesome.
So we'll put them in the show notes as a resource.
So, are there any other ways that you have been able to kind of find support and prioritize your mental and emotional health during all this? I know, you mentioned your own community, some other online and
Yeah.
in-person connections that you've been able to make, and therapy. We're huge proponents of therapy over here.
Yes.
What else has been helpful?
I love my therapist. She has a fertility background. She herself has gone through loss. She runs an organization specifically for people who've gone through losses that provides training to medical providers. So my therapist is absolutely incredible. Outside of therapy, after my like third loss, and I was beginning IVF for the first time, and my husband and I made the I don't know if I'd call it a mistake, but the choice to move outside of a city where I've always lived in cities, to move further outside to have a little more space to have a home. So I'm basically in a town surrounded by families. And it was really, really challenging for me. He'd be giving me injections at the kitchen table while we heard kids playing outside. It was a very hard space. And so I found myself home alone a lot, and a friend passed me a book. I love to read, but I hadn't been in a while. She's like, okay, I want you to check this book out. It's not normally your vibe. It's not literary, but it's smutty and it's got fantasy, and just give it a try. So I read that and just like went deep into this whole romantasy world, escapism world with books, super smutty. Like this, it started getting weird. I was like talking to my husband, and he'd be like, "What are you reading right now?" I'm like, "Okay, well, let me tell you about this dragon and what he can do with his tail." Like, so that book community
I
became
love it.
another space for me, and I think it became a good space for me because we don't talk about fertility. We don't talk about miscarriages, but also people aren't talking about parenthood. It's total escapism. It's completely just about joy. And it's been a lot of fun to connect to other readers that way. I do share the books I'm reading on my Instagram and find people will reach out about that. But I think that it doesn't have to be books, but if you can find an accessible escapism while going through this as well, that can be really helpful too. It does not have to be this big hobby that you can develop. It can be just like doing Legos at home, but something that lets you separate a bit from all of it is just really, really helpful for me.
I love that. And your therapist sounds awesome.
I think that finding a therapist is like finding a partner. You really do have to find someone that matches your energy, matches your goals. Not every therapist is a fit for everyone.
Mhm.
And I'd been in therapy for a while and realized that I was getting an active listener, but I wasn't really leaving with any guidance for after. So I found this new therapist, and We've been working together for about a year, and what I really, really appreciate her is she calls me out. She will say to me, like, how did the assignment I gave you go over the last 2 weeks? You were going to go do that yoga class in town so that you could try to meet people and get outside and exercise. How did the class go? And I'm like, well, I signed up and then I didn't quite make it. And she calls me out. She's like, well, then you're not engaging in the action. You're not engaging in what we're saying. And, when I'm spiraling, she tells me I'm spiraling and she helps pull me back. So that's what works for me. I think that I've spoken about before, doing consults with therapists to find the right fit for you is really important.
Yeah, that is so great.
And it's also so wonderful that you found someone that you've connected with who also has this background. Because so many times we
Right.
talk to people, or I myself, when trying to find a therapist during this time, talk to somebody who you had to explain, like, even just what the terminology was. And you're like, I don't want to spend
Yes.
my entire time educating you on like an IVF cycle. Let's talk about how I'm a hot mess right now because of the IVF cycle.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's why it's harder to talk to even like family and friends who haven't been through this because you end up feeling like you're teaching a lot. Um, this is a relationship. It's whether or not it's your therapist or just someone else in the lost community. Um, I have found that even having someone when I was going through a loss at one point where I took the medicine to pass at home, it was that timing. And I was able to text message photos of what was happening to a personal contact to be like, does this look like all, is it done yet? And asking those questions and having that relationship and being able to talk to my therapist about like the devastating moment of flushing the toilet and like having them really understand those really nuanced things. That means a lot to me. It means a lot to be able to say, so I had the moment of flushing the toilet and she knows what I mean. Because someone who's gone through a loss, like immediately they're like, yeah, I still have dreams about that sound. Like immediately they know exactly the feeling I'm talking about.
Yeah, and just ha I think people can intellectually understand the close intertwined mental and physical health aspects of these things, but to like viscerally understand how interconnected those two are is another thing, and
Yeah.
is so great when you can find that. So how did For the Baroness come about, and how did you find this wonderful name too?
So the name I was thinking like I wanted to create something for people who've been through this, people who, you know, even though the word barren can feel so hurtful. The word barren felt so hard. And I was like, I don't want it to feel bad. I want it to feel powerful. I want it to feel like something that we are connecting on, and this community is strong. We people refer to each other as warriors. Like we are a strong community. So I liked that it was for us, which is the beginning. But I am also a little bit of a English history nerd. I have a really useful master's degree in Shakespearean literature, that if you think it comes up often, you would be wrong. but but it made me, I was like, sometimes I've got that in my head of like, the English history, the Renaissance. And so I was thinking a little bit about, I kept seeing people say warrior, but I was like, well, what if we're just like regal? What if and I also thought about, there's been so many queens throughout history who, because of fertility issues, lost their power, lost their kingdom, lost their family lineage, were punished for it, were left and abandoned for their fertility. And that resonated a lot to me as well. Like, what does it feel like when your fertility feels equal to all of your power? So I think there was a lot of that train of thought going into it. Now I think about it and I'm like, this is just for us. That's why it's for the Baroness, for all of us, for our community to support each other. So there's a little bit of my, history, a little bit of nerdiness coming in there, but I think people can relate.
I love it.
I love it even more now. I already loved it, but I love it even more. And I'm so glad we asked that because I love the richness of the different layers of how that came to be. But I also love like kind of like taking back a word like that is, like if someone's like, oh, she's barren, I'm like, how old are you? Like, who says that?
What century is
Yeah,
this?
yeah, exactly. But then like I'm like a big believer in like owning, like taking those words
Yeah,
back and like owning them, but also obviously like the Barreness just like gives me like, Bridgerton vibes in the best way.
totally.
And and yeah, it's really cool. So I mean, like we said, it sounds like it has brought so much meaning to you on a day-to-day basis to have this outlet, like we said, for yourself, but for also the community of people engaging with your account and
Yeah,
your work. So can you share a little bit about that?
absolutely. I mean, it's been really wonderful. I have made some real friends there. Some people I've never met in person have, you know, sent me a care package when I had a loss. And every holiday season and Mother's Day, I coordinate a card exchange. And it's so that you could send a card to someone so that no matter what you're getting in the mail, you're getting something thoughtful. And I have seen people do this card exchange across the world. Like we've had over 40 countries participate. And then I got a photo of two who actually, one person was visiting Ireland and met the person who sent her a card and they met in person.
Oh, that's
And
amazing.
so seeing these relationships exist because of this community, I think is the most wonderful part. I also get a lot of medical advice. I get a lot of like, hey, I'm about to go into, you know, a procedure. Like, any tips for it? It was only because of this community that I was given the tip to take a stool softener after your retrieval. Whirlwind of a difference, like such a difference in comfort. So it offers that, but I also I really appreciate how much people trust me with their stories on there because there are so many people out there who don't have a public page but just want to express something they're going through. And I've had people send me a message just saying like, hey, I'm hiding in the bathroom right now of my sister's baby shower. This is really hard. And they're just looking for someone to reciprocate and say like, yeah, it is really hard. Like, you stay in here as long as you need. Let's have a connection. Let's call, let's chat. Like,
And you're
do
not
you
a
need
bad
something to laugh?
person.
You are
Like
not
I
a bad
I
person.
think you feel like you're like, I'm terrible. Why can't I be happy for them? And I'm always like, to me, I think it's weird if you don't feel bad. Like, like
Yeah.
if you're okay at someone's baby shower when you've experienced multiple losses and or infertility struggles, I think that's rare and incredible and I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
But to me, there's way more people that have a hard time with that and they obviously we're not terrible people. It's so normal and understandable. All those
Mhm.
emotions are happening at the same time.
Yeah, and it's human. It's human to feel jealousy, and it's even human to feel anger. Like I have absolutely gone into these situations where I have said to myself, I don't like the feeling that I'm having, but I'm going to honor it. Like, because I am feeling anger right now. I'm not angry at this person who's pregnant. I'm angry at my circumstances. I'm angry at the cards I was dealt. I'm angry at the universe. I'm angry at my uterus. I'm really angry at my uterus right now. But it doesn't, it all that matters is like that feeling is anger and that's real and it's okay. It's okay to feel that. It doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you a human going through a really hard thing.
Yeah. And having somebody
Yeah.
be able to validate that for you and say, like, no, like, this is normal. You're not a horrible human being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's figure out how we can get through it, even if it's just like, we'll sit here together and be like, this sucks.
Hmm.
That's so powerful.
I think not everyone talks about the anger, but it is real. I mean, I think we hear a
Hmm.
lot about the jealousy and that's very real too. And
Hmm.
but the anger is real. And that's why sometimes like the most comforting thing people would say sometimes is like, this is so unfair and I'm so sorry this is happening to you. And it was like, that's so simple, but it's like, yeah, it is. It is unfair
Hmm.
because we're good people. Like, why is this happening to us?
And that's so fair because I also have moments where I'm like with my husband and we're, playing with a neighbor's kids or something. And I'm like, I think we would be good at this.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
I,
yeah.
I think we could do this well. I'm not saying we would do it perfectly. We'd have
No,
hard
nobody
days
does. Yeah.
and you can complain about it too. I think that's another thing I want always like people I connect to know is like, even if you do find success and you have a child, parenting is hard. It's okay to complain about that. It's also okay to feel tired and upset, and you don't have to be grateful every single minute because because you finally had success. And that's another experience that I see people have when they get to the other side. But I do sometimes I'll see some horror story in the news, about some childhood neglect. And that to me is the moments where I'm like, this is how I know this isn't happening to me because I did something wrong. It's not that I deserve this. There isn't a cosmic choice being made over who does and who does not get kids. It is just like you said, unfair.
You're right. You can start to think like, what did I do in a past life that was so horrible
Right?
that this is my situation now? Like, what did I do? And whether it's, being able to get to a point where you can stop yourself and be like, actually, that's not what's happening. Calm down. Or having a community around you to be like, stop spiraling. That's not what's happening is so important and can be so,
Yeah.
so helpful
Mhm.
when you can't just get out of your own head.
And that's why,
Yeah,
like, for me, the
absolutely.
framing of like when something good happens and people say, like, oh, it's God's plan, or like God was smiling down on me. I'm like, oh, is he frowning down on me? Because, and
Mhm.
that's why I'm like, that frame just doesn't work for me in good or bad, because then I don't believe in
Mhm.
that. Too many horrible things happen to good people that like, and good things happen to some horrible people. So I was like,
Yeah.
I just don't see that kind of religious, like just
Yeah,
predetermination as comforting it to me, at least because of that reason. If it has to go
I
both
agree.
ways, yeah.
And it's interesting because I've never thought about like this is something God did. This is a choice with any other part of my body when it doesn't work. Like I have terrible eyesight. So I am wearing very thick contacts. I always have to have glasses on, but and I've needed it my whole life, but I've never said like, gosh, what did I do to deserve this poor eyesight? Like, and I've never said I don't deserve glasses. Like I shouldn't access treatment for this. It's just I was born with eyes that don't work as well. I was born with a uterus that doesn't work as well. And there's no rhyme or reason for it that I did to cause it. It just is what it is.
Have you seen Joy, The Birth of IVF?
I haven't watched it yet.
It's a wonderful movie, but they use that exact argument when one of the characters is talking to their mom, who's very religious, and they're saying like,
Mm,
"This is to people who have trouble conceiving what glasses are to people who have trouble seeing." Like, how are you saying one is okay and one isn't?
yeah. No, I
Yeah.
haven't watched it yet. It's on my radar to watch, but I've heard mixed things. I've heard it's wonderful, but I've also heard people who are like, oh, it can be a little frustrating in moments because it's very like, the positive affirmation kind of thing, but it's on my list to check out.
Yeah. I mean, it can be emotional to watch it, but I think it is good. And it definitely, I was kind of glad it didn't make it seem like it happens for every patient, and
Yes.
that it didn't happen right away. I mean, it's just symbolic of still to this day the complexity of IVF. But yeah.
So, what are your plans for this community that you've created? Are you still like able to do this as one person? It sounds like it's
Yeah.
a lot of time and energy. Are you hoping to grow it and offer different sorts of supports? What are your hopes for the future?
Yeah, so I love the opportunity to share other stories on the blog. I've been adding a lot more like Instagram live conversations. My hope is that this can feel like a supportive community, still doing the card exchanges and the connections, but also feel very educational. So I've really enjoyed bringing, like I recently had a phenomenal Instagram live where we saved it to the reel with a woman who's a five-time surrogate, and now she runs a surrogacy consulting firm, and it was just like really informative and helpful. So I think people being able to see it as a place for learning, um, it's it's a resource, it's where you can answer questions. Right now, definitely perfectly fine running it on my own, because it is also such a self-care for me. I really enjoy it. I really feel like when I'm having a hard moment, I'm able to hop on and connect to people and see what people are doing. um, and I think that it's also, so you mentioned this a little earlier, it's a really good space to see the different outcomes of infertility and IVF, because not everyone has success, but it's a lot easier to share a photo of a baby after IVF than it is to share a photo of nothing. So we see so many photos of success and we see so many stories of success, and people love to share their success stories, but it's really hard to see the stories of people who haven't yet had success or have ended their fertility journey and are working on finding joy and acceptance in a child-free life, or are transitioning from medical treatment to adoption, to surrogacy, to other pathways for building a family. Those are a lot harder to see and they're a lot less visible. And so I would really love for the Barrenness to be a space to see all of those type of journeys, both the ones that end in success and the ones who end in parenthood in different ways, and the ones who are still going through it, and the ones who are accepting that this is not where they will have their life go. And so yeah, I really want all of those spaces to be available.
I love
I love
that.
that.
And I mean, we agree, obviously, that we're trying to do that all the time with all paths. And this podcast specifically, we want to have guests that are at all different stages of their family building journey, and to be able to share that, and especially people who come to the end of the road, whatever that looks like for them, without parenting. We really are honoring and trying to share their stories on the podcast, because many of them are still like, I would say, coping with that outcome,
Mhm.
but they also, of course, have like a very full and beautiful life. And it wasn't necessarily the one they envisioned, but it is a really wonderful, wonderful life and family. It just may
Mhm.
look different, like I said, and may not be involve parenting a human, but often it includes parenting animals, which is
Yeah.
also very lovely.
Yes. My pup can verify that. I had someone say to me once, I was babysitting for my friend, watching her kids, and I took them to like the boys' baseball practice, and one of the parents came up to me and they were like, "Oh, so do you have a family?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do. My husband and I live just up the hill with our dog." And she's like, "Oh, but you don't have kids." And it was
Uh,
that kind of
Oh,
differentiation of like, no, but no, I don't have kids, but I do have a family. We are a
yeah.
family, we're a family unit. And so I think that if there's anything secondary that comes from for the Barrenness, it's also people who have no connection to infertility to kind of recognize how much people around them might be going through it, might have a connection, and have a little more sensitivity toward that.
Yeah. Oh, I hate that. I mean, really, they really just asking like, are you like me and I have three kids? Oh, shut up.
Mhm.
You know.
yeah. Families are what you define them.
I
You shouldn't put
know.
your definition of a family on anybody else. That's unhelpful at
Yeah.
best. And
Yeah. Well, my husband, when I told my husband about it, he was like, "Well, what am I, chopped liver over here?"
Oh,
oh,
exactly.
It's
Exactly.
like, no, dear, you're my family.
I know. And the dog goes like, me too, me
Right.
too. Yeah.
well, that actually kind of relates to our kind of wrap up questions that we like to ask everybody. So I
Yeah.
can share both of them and then you can kind of pick what order you would like to answer them. And even though
Okay.
this last story might have illustrated a really solid answer to question number two. um, so the first is what's one thing that you would say to someone who is just starting to grow their family? And the second is what's one thing you wish people would stop saying when someone tells them they're struggling to build their family?
Mm. So number two, I feel like there's so many things that we could say are hurtful, and it could be something that might be hurtful for one person is not hurtful for another. But for myself in particular, I really wish people would stop with the toxic positivity of, I know it'll happen for you, this is going to happen one day. I just believe your baby is out there, and anything that, truthfully, anything that implies they can predict the future. That is what I wish people would stop, because what it does is it takes away my space to have fear that it won't happen, because there is a reality that it might not happen. And I want to be able to have that feeling and express that feeling and know that it's the truth that it might not happen. So if you say anything that implies you can predict the future, that actually is not as helpful as you think it is. Rather, let your friends, let your family have the fear that it might not, and understand what that means, because none of us can predict the future. So that would be something that I would recommend doing, is just don't assume you know anything that's going to happen because we don't.
And don't argue with someone when they say, this is my family.
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah.
What about the flip side? What is one thing that you would
Yeah.
say to somebody who's just starting?
Yeah, if I met someone who's just starting and they know if there's trouble already, maybe it's taking a while, maybe they don't. I think I would just let someone know that I am there for them for whatever comes of this journey for them, whether or not it happens right away and now they're coping with a pregnancy or a newborn, or whether it takes some time, or whether they have a loss, that wherever they are at in their need of support, that's the support I want to be to them. So letting them know that I'm there for them, that's what I think is the best thing we can do. And then if someone is expressing that they're at the beginning of struggles, it's been a while, they've been trying a while, or they had a loss, or they're at the beginning of, they're considering IVF, anything like that. Just making sure they know that truly their feelings are valid and they're not alone. Because I think that when you're going through infertility, I could be sitting in a room of 10 people who are all friends and having a really good time. But inside, I still feel a little bit lonely. I still feel a little bit sad. And so I would want anyone to know that if you're feeling that way, that there is a community and a space for you out there, and that we do understand and we really care about those hard feelings.
That's perfect. Very well said.
Thank you.
I tell Emily, I would say a good amount of the time on this podcast, I feel like I'm like the heart eyes emoji. And this is one of those times where I'm like, I'm so sorry you have gone through this, you and your husband, your family. But I also think you're a wonderful, loving, giving person to be doing what you are doing with this struggle. I think you have a lovely way about you and a philosophy and a wisdom. And so I'm
Thank
glad
you.
I always like say to people when I find out, either personally or professionally, that they've gone through infertility and loss, I always say, well, I'm sorry we have this in common. And I certainly feel that way. I wish you weren't going through this, but you found meaning in it, and you're sharing your love and wisdom with people. And I think it's really great.
I really appreciate that. And I appreciate, Kate and Emily, you so much for creating All Fats Family Building, because, like, truthfully, the biggest message that you can send to people is that however you need to go about making your family is beautiful and
Mhm.
is valid. And I really love that you're doing that, that there's no one right pathway to finding your family. And there's no one definition of family. And that's
Yeah.
definitely the message that you get across. I appreciate that so
Oh, well,
much. Yeah,
good. Well,
thank
good.
you.
And we didn't create our organization, but we found that name, and Emily like held on to it because
I fought for this one.
until we were ready for it. And thank God, because we could have had a really bad name without Emily. But I think you're right. I mean, I love the story that it's telling, and the not just that all the paths are celebrated and honored, but that all the outcomes as well, because I think that's the
Mm,
part, like you said, that a lot of people don't talk about. They want to share the story that's picture perfect at the end, but I think we have to tell all the stories and all the places that people are along the way so that people don't feel alone.
yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed
Thank
chatting with
you.
you.
Thank you so much, Meg. This has been really lovely.
Yeah.
And we will definitely put your links in the show notes. So if anybody is listening, wants to get in touch, or if they're not
Yeah.
already
Awesome.
connected with you on Instagram, they can find you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies.
We hope you'll join us next time for more family building stories and resources. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts to make sure you never miss an episode. And follow us on social media at All Paths FB, or visit our website, allpathsfb.org, for more information about our work. All Paths Family Building is so grateful to the members of our circle of support who are vital to our ability to provide emotional support, education, and advocacy that is open to anyone struggling to grow their families. Today, we want to give a special shout out to our gold sponsor, Mass General Brigham. Thank you for joining us for this episode. Please help spread the word so that anyone who is struggling to grow their family can join the conversation. It's an honor to walk with you on your family building journey.